reflected in this new estimate, which I've issued a number of times over the past couple of weeks, but now to stress it once again, this is now an open theme of discussion in world public opinion. The U.S. attack on Iran had been off the table as of December 2007 at the latest. This was when the national intelligence estimate from the CIA indicated that there was no Iranian nuclear program in action at that time. And that, of course, was a signal that the Cheney-esque neocon invisible government faction, again, the invisible government with Cheney being a visible spokesman for the rest of it that you don't see, had, after their unsuccessful attempt with the rogue B-52 in August to September of 2007, and their failure to do anything against Ahmadinejad at Columbia in October of 2007, the Cheney group, or the group that is behind Cheney, controlling him, of which he is a puppet, they had decided that they had been forced to back off by the preponderant force of the other group, the Brzezinski, James Baker, more traditional imperialist, non-neocon group. What has now happened, though, is that the Brzezinski, Joseph Nye, the late Samuel Huntington, as long as he was part of it, the soft power group, and the play the other countries one against the other group, is now in a kind of a crisis because their planned color revolution in Iran is failing. The Green faction, the Mousavi, Rafsanjani CIA faction in Iran, the Death to Russia, Death to China faction, is losing out. And Mrs. Clinton has come up with this bizarre but accurate analysis, bizarre because of the way she interprets it. Mrs. Clinton this past week warns that Iran is now a military dictatorship and that the U.S. wants to save the Islamic Republic of Iran with economic sanctions. What an amazing thing. Up to now, we were told that Islamic fundamentalism of the Iranian variety was the most dangerous thing in the world. Normally, you'd say, well, you should be happy that a normal military dictatorship of a much more traditional type is coming in. But no, says Mrs. Clinton, we've got to do everything possible to save the mullahs, save the monarchy. This was a rare epiphany of world history that we had from Mrs. Clinton this past week. So sanctions in the foreground, but of course now the danger of the attack is growing in the background. The danger of the attack right now is, of course, blackmail and extortion, but it also includes the option that there really might be an attack. And we have to take the following very seriously. First of all, the chief of the Russian General Staff, General Makarov, says on Wednesday that he cannot exclude a U.S. military attack against Iran and that this would have horrible, terrible consequences. As soon as the U.S., he says, and this is the part that qualifies it, as soon as the U.S. has freed itself from Afghanistan and Iraq, then we will probably possibly get the attack on Iran, says Makarov in Moscow this past Wednesday. I think that the consequences of this attack, not only for the region but also for Russia and for the international community, will be horrible, terrible. And what comes out of this is going to be very, very hard to say. Iran is a neighbor of Russia. The Moscow government is closely following the situation and is doing everything possible in order to avoid this war. Now, the one thing Russia has not done is to deliver the famous S-300 air defense system, which would, of course, raise radically the price of a U.S. or Israeli or anybody else's attack on Iran. And this also comes in the wake of a similar statement from General Leonid Ivashov, a former head of the Russian General Staff. And Ivashov points to the role of the United States. He says an attack by the United States and Israel on Iran is now very probable. And it will depend on what Russia and China do. And, of course, some of that is going to be behind the scenes. We can't see it quite so clearly right now. That's Ibashov. You can see these things on the RIA Novosti website and elsewhere. And indeed, Ahmadinejad says the same thing. Ahmadinejad says that he thinks that the spring-summer of 2010, so spring and summer of this year, are likely to be marked by a U.S. and or Israeli attack on his country. Now, there's all of this in the wake of the fact that as of February 11th, the Green movement seems to have fizzled. The perspective for a color revolution inside Iran seems to go a-glimmering, and therefore the U.S.-British combine is rethinking, and therefore we get this bizarre statement from Mrs. Clinton. Notice that in the middle of this, we have the new head of the International Atomic Energy Agency. This is Amano of Japan. Mano Amano says, he deals in innuendo. This was something El-Baradei, his predecessor, did not do. El-Baradei thought that it was his responsibility not to engage in guessing possibilities, what could be, might be, and so forth, because those words would then become pretexts for war. Amano is freely raising all kinds of hypothetical possibilities, could be, perhaps, eventualities, hypotheticals, in his reports. And then what happens, of course, is the Associated Press, in particular, takes these reports, they strip away the qualifiers, and they say, International Atomic Energy Agency now considers that Iran is doing this, that, and the other thing, which, of course, Amano can say, well, I never said that. Look at all the might be, possibly, could be qualifiers that I put in. So Amano of Japan is a decided step downward in his moral intellectual qualities and in his reliability compared to El-Baradei. And, of course, that's the lesson the U.S. learned from many years fighting El-Baradei, is you had to get rid of him. So that is the question about is Iran building warheads and so forth, this possibility raised by Amano on the basis of nothing. Therefore, we are back to this. It's appalling. What we need to do now is the usual techniques, right? Go and figure the nights of the new moon over the next 6-9 months, and those are the times when the stealth bombers and the cruise missiles are most likely to make their appearance. We did have Netanyahu for 2 days in Moscow trying to convince the Russians not to deliver this advanced S-300 surface-to-air missile system. It's the second most modern that the Russians have. The more modern one they keep for themselves, and this is deployed around Moscow. But that is now front burner once again, and simply this is a change. We had a period of acute danger from about 2003, 2004 through the end of 2007. Since then, slightly more than 2 years, we've had a time when the big effort in the U.S. administration was regime change, but now through color revolutions on the inside, as well as the fomenting of the various ethnic groups along the periphery of this Persian heartland in Iran. But now we have shifted back to acute danger of such an attack based on Makarov, Ibashov, and indeed what Ahmadinejad himself says. So hold on to your hats. That's now the new reality. Color revolution defeated, war now more likely. And we'll be back in a minute.